All right, so I would like to introduce myself. My name is Garrison Redd. I'm the Mount Sinai Spinal Cord Injury Outreach Coordinator. And today we have a very special webinar. We will be discussing adaptive driving, vehicle modifications, and things of that nature. So we'll be going through everything from the beginning to the end. We have some wonderful guest panelists today. We have Daniel Bussani from Bussani Mobility. They typically adapt vehicles. They have vehicles that are modified. Also, we have Eli Shore from Tri-Boro. He trains people into learning how to get back on the road. So he'll be able to discuss, some of the different adaptions that are out there, as well as Avrielle Peltz. We have her from Rehabologym. There they have a simulator where you can get in a vehicle and learn how to somewhat adaptive drive. So they will all explain more about their companies or organizations. However, I just wanted to give them a brief introduction. They could probably tell you more about what they do. But and the purpose of this webinar is to educate those who are looking for a modified vehicle or an adaptive vehicle and what's out there for them. So without further ado, any one of the panelists, y'all can start by, providing a brief introduction, and then I will go into some questions and things of that nature and ask for, and if the audience have any questions as well. We also going to be having a poll because we are planning a adaptive driving, somewhat of a video. So, with that said, we're going to have a poll to ask the audience on what would they like to be shown in the video in the future. All right. So without further ado, whoever would like to start it off, Avrielle, if you would like to start it off.
Sure. I have a merged presentation between me and Eli. So we thought the best for them would be I'll start from the clinical end, then Eli
perfect.
take over the on-road end, and then Daniel can tag team with Eli to talk about the adaptive devices and the vehicle modifications.
Sounds good. That will work. So if y'all ready to start it off, we are ready.
If you gave me permission to screen share, I'm going to screen share.
All right, will do.
With you. And I'm going to.
Give me a second. All right.
Let me know if you're able to see my
screen. I'm not able to see yet. I'm still trying to provide you with permission.
I don't know if there is a permission for screen share.
Yeah, I don't think there's a permission for
just do it.
Yeah, just try it.
You you have to make them co.
Oh, make them co. Oh, she got it. It worked perfect.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Yeah, share the screen. Thanks, man.
All right, here we go. So let me just, I'm trying to, let me turn this into a slideshow. Everybody can see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So my name is Avrielle Peltz. I'm the clinical director, and I'm also an occupational therapist from Rehabologym. So we are a specialized neurological robotic rehabilitation center. We use cutting edge technologies and robotics for intensive occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. We also have a health and wellness program, and we also specialize in return to driving procedures. Who can benefit from our services? Our core is spinal cord injury, brain injury, and stroke. And then we have a host of every type of neurological condition that you can think of. We don't turn anybody away. We have exoskeletal bionic walking training, as well as a lot of upper extremity, hand and upper limb robotic technologies. So what would be a reason that someone would need a driver safety assessment or an evaluation? Well, typically the reasons would be that there's an onset of a new injury or illness, specifically a traumatic brain injury, stroke, a spinal cord injury, any type of neurological condition or altered mental state. Also, people that may have recently had a seizure, and or just the general aging process, that your family might have concerns about your ability to drive. If there are any audio, visual, or gross motor coordination changes in your body that can affect your ability to drive. Also, people that tend to have multiple car accidents or fender benders, or even people with license suspension, we can work with you to get your license back to get safe on the road again. What would prevent someone that's newly injured from going for a driver safety assessment or evaluation? Very typically, we see this, that a lot of people are fearful to have a driver safety assessment or evaluation. But we have to tell you that we're actually on your side, especially, working with Eli. We are really on your side to do our best efforts to try to get everyone and anyone behind the wheel to gain their independence to drive again. But many people fear that by doing an assessment, they could lose their driver's license, which would mean that they lose their independence. They might have fear of someone finding out about their limitations, or of just fear of learning about yourself that you might have limitations that you were unaware of. Some people might be in denial that there is a problem, or you could have a lack of self-awareness of any type of deficits. What are New York State laws regarding fitness to drive? Well, typically after certain neurological conditions such as a seizure or a stroke or traumatic brain injury, sometimes there is a 12-month rule that you cannot drive. But the physician is really your physician, whether it's your neurologist, your physiatrist, your primary care physician, a cardiologist. If a physician authorizes you to be able to drive, you can have that authorization where those DMV restrictions could be lifted. But an occupational therapist such as myself or Eli, we are the true experts in deeming someone fit to drive. So there's not necessarily a pass fail. It's a whole entire battery of different testing that the occupational therapist will go through to determine, based on your abilities, if you're deemed to be fit to get back on the road. So standard procedures or protocols, or part one, would be a clinical assessment, which includes an off-road evaluation. We at Rehabologym, we have a driver simulator machine that takes objective measures to determine safety behind the wheel. And we can also say, hey, you might just need to go to someone like Eli or Daniel to look at an on-road assessment to actually get behind the wheel and determine what adaptive devices would meet your needs to be independent again. So really there's a two-step process: the clinical portion and then the on-road portion. And then the works at the end are to really work on getting that vehicle adapted properly for your needs. What is the gold standard of an occupational therapy clinical assessment to evaluate someone's fitness to drive? Well, we use something called the Occupational Therapy DORA assessment at Rehabologym, which stands for the Driver Off-Road Assessment Battery. This is a validated test that was developed and is widely accepted in the US, Europe, Asia, Australia. So it's not just national to the US, it's actually internationally accepted throughout the world. We're also aided members, which is a driver rehabilitation specialist website. It has a lot of resources for driver rehabilitation specialists, as well as newly injured people or people that want to get back on the road. There's wonderful resources if you want to check out the aided website. We are aided members. We use the OT DORA. We also use robotics and cutting edge technologies to determine fitness to drive with objective measures using the driver simulator. We work in close collaboration with driver schools and driver specialists such as Eli and also Daniel Bussani. We also would like to fill in the gaps of what is lacking in the driver rehab community. So not only do we do driver assessments, but we actually have a driver rehab program. So if you're learning to use your adaptive controls, let's say hand controls, or you have a delay in your reaction time from your spinal cord injury, that you're not able to hit that brake or gas pedal quick enough, we could work with you on sharpening those skills to meet DMV standards. There are two specific rules that are mandated by Department of Motor Vehicles that we don't have much control over. One is your visual test you need to have 20/20 vision with or without corrective lenses bilaterally in both eyes on a Snellen chart, which is one of those basic charts that you see at the DMV or when you go to the eye doctor. You have to get 20/20 vision in order for us to clear you to meet DMV standards. So that's number one. Number two, we also have to make sure that you're able to hit your brake and your gas pedal 15 times under 9 seconds. If you're able to hit that gas and brake, whether it's by foot or by hand control, you have to meet that as DMV standards. So those are things that we test for. And if for some reason there's a problem with your eyesight and or there's a limitation in that ability to hit that brake or pedal, those are things that we can work with you on, as well as my friends that do the adaptive technologies and on-road assessments. So here's just a quick glimpse of some of the technologies that we use. We have the STISIM driver simulator machine that we can simulate a whole slew of different scenarios, such as pedestrians in the street. We can put wind in the air. We could throw things at your windshield. We can hit that check engine light and kind of throw you off to actually simulate real life situations. And there's a very high correlation or validation between what we are able to measure objectively with the driver simulator, as well as what happens on the on-road test. We have a seat, but as you can see at the bottom of the simulator, there's 4 wheels here, and there's a split in the middle. So if you're in your wheelchair, we can actually move half of the simulator away, so you do not have to transfer into the car seat, but you can actually drive using your wheelchair. And then we have some of the other objective measures that are shown to the right. We have sensors, and we do motor assessments as well as visual assessment using that robotic technology. So what happens? What is the actual process? It's kind of a 2-tier process. We usually require a doctor's referral to come to Rehabologym for your off-road clinical assessment. You then come to us, and it could be a battery of pen and paper tasks, visual assessments, as well as robotic objective measures using some of those apparatuses that I just showed you, as well as some physical assessments. So we will do manual muscle testing. We will take a look at your trunk balance. We also want to make sure that we look at your trunk stability. So if you needed to reach over into your glove compartment, that you're not losing your balance at the wheel. And if so, we have to put safety measures in place for you. We also test the ability of being able to turn your head to be able to look behind the vehicle. And if you don't have that ability, then what can we do to help swag up your vehicle by cool adaptive devices or extra mirrors or things like that, so that if you are a high level, let's say you're a high C-level spinal cord injury, and you don't have the ability to really turn your head or move your body, there are other ways that we can look to adapt your vehicle to become independent. And that comes through the clinical assessment. If you get through that battery assessment, then like I said, it's not really pass fail. It's whether you are fit to drive. If we feel that you can have adaptive devices that can help you, or that you are deemed fit to get on the road to do an on-road assessment, then we would deem you fit to drive, and we would say, client, proceed to on-road driver assessment, and then we would refer you over to Eli, and then Eli would also work with Daniel to refer you if you needed special modifications for your vehicle. If for some reason there are any red flags, particularly if you're not meeting that gas or pedal test, if you're having visual issues, if there are any cognitive problems with your judgment or safety that maybe you're unaware of, then we may say you might need some training. You can either come to Rehabologym for that training, or we'll refer you to a center closer to home. We may refer you for other testing with other medical professionals, or you may go for a second opinion at another center if you don't agree with our opinion or recommendations. I just want to give you a quick glimpse of our driver referral packet. It's a pretty much a one-pager. This just explains that we look at motor function, visual skills, perceptual skills, and cognitive abilities. We also give your doctor an optional visual screen. So if the doctor does a visual screen on you, or you just recently went to the eye doctor or neuro-ophthalmologist, if we have that information, we can package it all together and we can send it off for your on-road assessment or to the DMV, depending on what your personal circumstances are. But we have this one-page questionnaire. We send this quick checklist to your doctor, and all we need is your doctor to sign off. Rather than you doing the legwork, you can give us your doctor's information, and we'll contact the doctor directly to get your medical clearance and have this paperwork filled out. And then you're kind of good to go to come to the clinic for a clinical evaluation. As you can see, we'll then go through a social history with you, like, you know, what kind of driving do you do or want to be able to do? Do you live in a rural area? Are you mostly city driving? Do you need to go to school? Do you need to use your vehicle for work purposes? Do you currently still have a license? And if you don't have a license, or if there is a suspension, we can help you get your license unsuspended, at least to get you through the testing process. Okay, we've done it before. It takes a little time, but it can be done. It has been done. And these are just some general questionnaires of your lifestyle and what you want to be able to do. This is an actual assessment, just so you can see all of the sections of an evaluation. And we send all of our evaluations. This does not go to DMV. This goes directly to you, the client. If you would like to share it with your physician, or you give us permission to send it to your physician, we will, but we will not do it without your permission. So I don't want you to be fearful that if you do an evaluation and, you know, let's say you're not passing some of those things that we have concerns, that doesn't mean you can't, that doesn't mean you're going to lose your license. It just means that you have this information, take it or leave it. You do it with, you know, you do what you want with it. Okay. But we're not going to contact DMV unless we're mandated by a court of law, or you need for us to fill out the information from DMV that we need to give with your permission. So these are just examples of what we actually look at: the visual acuity test, how your eyes move, what your perception is. We do auditory hearing testing. We do balance testing. For those of you that can't stand, it doesn't matter. We look at your ability for your sitting balance and just want to make sure that you have the right harnessing in to keep you safe. We do manual muscle testing, like I talked about. And then we also do proprioceptive or sensory testing. Also, we also look at grip strength, because if you do have, depending on whether you're a complete or incomplete spinal cord injury, we need to know whether you have the ability to grip the steering wheel safely. And if you can't grip the steering wheel safely, then we would note that we might need a spinner knob or some adaptive devices for that, the vehicle for you. Again, these are all the different, we look at 22 different skills that are needed for driving. So this is just a quick checklist sheet. And Eli also has similar sheets that we use synonymously with each other. And then this is just an example of our summary sheet and what we give to you. This is just a blank copy. So if we say an mild deficits noted, but we still would pass you and say you're fit to drive, go to the on-road, or whether we have concerns or whether you need adaptive devices, it's just easy checklist that we'll send off with you. And just lastly, as an example, these are all the skills that we look at. So for you guys, for the spinal cord injury population, my concern, if you just scan all the way to the right, to the second to last box, if you go to the bottom row and then go up one, and you see reaction time. So for me, what does that skill mean? That skill means the time required to respond to a stimulus. So God forbid, if a pedestrian was coming into the road, can you swerve or move your vehicle or hit that brake as quickly as you need to, given your type of injury? So how that impacts in real life is the inability to brake quick enough in an emergency situation to avoid an accident. So those are things that I'm looking at. If you're teetering on that safety issue, I would either say you might need some more training, or hey, do an on-road with Eli. But then I would tick off, hey, there's a delayed reaction time. I'm just a little concerned about it. Or let's look to the left of reaction time, motor planning, which means the ability to perform motor functions. How does that impact someone's ability to drive? It could give you difficulty with motor components of driving, which may impact your reaction time again. So those are things that I would be looking at and working together with you to say, what do we need to do to pick up your pace in this reaction time and make sure that you're 100% safe? Because just so you know, if you do ever get behind the wheel without getting a clearance or having evidence to show that you had an evaluation, or you're making steps to do an evaluation, and God forbid you ever get into a fender bender with someone, or someone gets hurt in that vehicle, you can be held liable or responsible, and someone can look into your medical history and say, hey, this guy or gal just recently had a spinal cord injury. They were not, I don't see anything in their history that shows that they ever went for an evaluation to make sure that they're fit to drive. And you could be held responsible for someone's injuries, or God forbid death, if someone gets injured in a car accident. So I always say to just, whether you come for an occupational therapy driver eval or not, always make sure that if your doctor deems you safe to drive, to have them write that down on a prescription for you, leave it in your glove compartment, have it for you, but you need some type of clearance to allow you to get behind the wheel after a neurological injury, specifically a spinal cord injury, for your protection. Okay, so don't be fearful, be proactive. This is just a quick example of a real life evaluation that we did with someone. And I'm just blacking out the names here, but again, we highlight where we had some issues, but regardless of any deficits that were found, we still recommended that this person goes for that on-road evaluation. This person was very nervous. They also got lost in their parking lot and couldn't find the vehicle when they left. But we understand that it's still an examination situation. So we look at the whole picture, and we know that you might be nervous. So we have to take all of those things into account when we're looking at your ability to drive or get back on the road. This is just an example of our driver simulator, so you have a sense of what it looks like. Again, this is someone that is using both arms and legs, but we can pull this out and you can be in your wheelchair, and we can still look at similar skill sets and test your vision, test your reaction time, test your braking ability. So let me just show you a quick glimpse. Before the it's not about changing the Okay, so that just gives you a quick glimpse. It has simulated mirrors on the side, and this is just a quick example of a city drive. And here are some of my references, and there is the information for the aided website. If you want to take a look at the aided website, I highly recommend it to you because it has a lot of great driving resources on there. And now I will pass the torch over to my colleague, Eli, and then to Daniel. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us. Great presentation, Avrielle. So my name is Eli Shore, and the name of my company is Tri-Boro Driver Rehab. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give first just a little overview, and then I'll go to the slides. I don't know if you can see me. Okay. So we started Tri-Boro 12 years ago. We saw there was a need for a driving school that specializes in disabilities. There's a lot of people with all types of disabilities. It could be from very mild, nerve damage to the legs, like neuropathy, or it could be something very severe like a spinal cord injury or a stroke. So for today, I'm just going to discuss, what the process is, for someone who has a, who has a spinal cord injury. So when it comes to spinal cord injuries, So obviously the most sensitive part of the spine is probably the cervical spine, and the worst spinal cord injuries are going to be a C4, C5, somewhere in the cervical range, and that's going to leave the patient with as a quadriplegic. Now, whenever someone calls me up, they have a spinal cord injury, and they want to go back to driving, or they want to learn how to drive. So the first thing we do is we want to get information. Okay, how old are you? When did you have the injury? Do you have a learner's permit? Do you have a driver's license? Do you have any experience driving? Are you in a power wheelchair? Are you in a manual wheelchair? Are you able to transfer? So when it comes to spinal cord injuries, everybody's very, very different. And the first thing we need to figure out is how severe is the disability? What I mean is like this. In our company in Tri-Boro, we have 5 vehicles currently. We have 2 evaluators and we have 5 vehicles. So we have what we call low tech and we have what we call high tech. So high tech vans, we have 2 vans, which are wheelchair accessible, and they have high tech systems. So they have joystick controlled gas and brake, joystick controlled steering. We have electronic gear shifters, electronic secondary controls like your signals. And if someone is in a power wheelchair and they have very minimal movement with their arms, because they don't have the range of motion, or they don't have the strength to turn the steering wheel, so they have enough of a grip on a joystick, just like they drive their power wheelchair. So I'm going to have them evaluated with my coworker Ranan Zaidel, and so Ranan he specializes in high tech systems. So we have the main system that we are currently using is called the EMC system, and it has horizontal steering. We have maybe 30 to 40 different configurations for this vehicle. So what would happen is they would meet us at our office, or we go to the client's house, depending on where they live. We'll do an assessment. We'll say, okay, you need a joystick on the right side at exactly this height, this type of grip, and so on, a tri-pin or whatever it may be. Then Ranan will go, he'll set up the van with that setup. Then we'll open up the ramp. It's wheelchair accessible. We go right in with the wheelchair. Ranan will get you set. He'll get you situated right behind the driver's seat, and he'll adjust all of the settings and all the joysticks and all of the devices in the vehicle. And then he'll do an assessment with you in the vehicle. And then whoever is a candidate, if he feels that you could achieve getting a driver's license with this high-tech equipment, he will do training as well. When the training is complete, we'll set you up with a driver with a road test if it's necessary. So someone who never drove before, they were injured when they were 7 years old. They were involved in a car accident as a passenger, and they have a cervical spinal injury. So we'll train them we'll evaluate them, we'll train them how to drive, we'll set them up with a road test, we'll take them to the road test. And after they finish the road test, when they get the driver's license, we're going to write up a whole script, which will outline exactly what you need for your vehicle. What does that mean? We're going to call Bussani Mobilities, the mobility dealerships that we work with, and they specialize in high-tech systems. And what we'll do is we'll say, okay, so this individual needs a passenger side entry, power fold-out ramp with a certain depth of conversion, a 10-inch drop floor, 14-inch drop floor. They need this type of vehicle because they sit very tall in their wheelchair. And we'll say, okay, you need this type of lockdown system. This is how his wheelchair is going to be locked down behind that driver's seat. This is the exact type of driving systems that he needs, from gas to brake to steering to the horn button to the signals to the windshield wipers. We're going to write all of that up, okay? And thank God we have vehicles nowadays, training vehicles that we're able to train a lot of different type of spinal cord injuries with one vehicle, okay? So this would be all for what we call high tech. Now, my specialty is I'm the specialist when it comes to all the low tech stuff. So hand controls, left foot gas pedal, reduced effort steering, all types of steering devices. So let's say you have a spinal cord injury who they've been doing a lot of therapy, and the way they sit in a vehicle, even in their wheelchair, they have enough leverage to get enough, they have enough strength. So they may be an incomplete quadriplegic or a paraplegic, right? Let's say someone has a T12 spinal cord injury, paralyzed from waist down. So I'm going to evaluate them and figure out exactly what type of hand controls would suit them the best. So I'll give you an example. You have someone who has good range of motion. Okay, so if I put his hand in a tri-pin, he could crank that steering wheel. So he has a grip issue. So the way the spinal cord injury affected him is that he has no grip, but he has good strength and good range of motion. So what I'll do for him is I'll put a tri-pin. His hand will get locked in on the steering wheel, and he could turn the steering wheel with one hand without having to grip anything. Now, what do we do for hand controls? So there's many different type of hand controls, and the first thing I'm going to look at is it a grip issue? Is it a range of motion issue? Is it a strength issue? So let's say the guy has good range of motion. He could push forward, okay? He just can't grip. His fine motor skills, he has deficits over there. So what I'll do is I'll put a special type of hand control called the right angle hand control, where he'll lay his hand on top and he'll push downwards for gas and push forward for brake. So I don't know if I could see. Let me see if this will work. Actually, I don't think because my camera's blocking. Unless I don't know if you guys could see that, but there's a bunch of different type of hand controls that we have. It's just a mock-up. Maybe soon I can have some videos. I'll see what we have. But what I'm going to be looking at is, again, could I get the guy into a vehicle without going high tech? Now, obviously, sometimes we have someone in a power wheelchair. He's a paraplegic. It's just easier for him to get around, but he has good upper body strength. So we don't necessarily want him to drive with a joystick because that's a pretty expensive. It's costly. It's not expensive. It's costly. When you start driving with electronic systems, it gets expensive. So we're always looking what's the most cost-effective way to get this individual to drive. So if I could get him to drive with hand controls, so he would still need the wheelchair accessible vehicle. He'll drive from his power wheelchair, but now we'll set up his vehicle with hand controls. So we'll get him with let's say a push right angle hand control on the left side. We'll have a tri-pin on this side. Let's say he has, we took care of the grip issue because we put his hand into a tri-pin. So now you can turn the steering wheel. But the problem is, yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but if Avrielle is still sharing her screen. So if you're trying to show us something,
This is his screen.
Oh, okay.
that's Avrielle Peltz.
I think it's actually his actual screen, like his face screen.
So what I'll do is stop sharing hers, and then you can share yours now, Eli.
Can you see mine? I don't even know how to do it. Could you see me as
On the bottom.
On the bottom,
it
you
says
should
shared
see,
screen.
yeah, on the bottom, you should see share screen.
okay? Share content or
Mhm.
share screen.
Share
Screen.
screen.
There we go.
Yep.
Hold on. Do you see me now? Start broadcast. 3, 2, 1. Let's see.
Yep, we can
hold on.
see you now. Well, screen broke.
It says broadcasting.
Do you
No,
want
this
me
is
to go
screen
back to your slides, Eli? Here you go.
Yeah, 1 second. I don't even know where I am. I may have
I
messed
have
up the
your
whole thing.
video.
Okay, stop sharing. Okay, could you guys see me talking?
Yeah, we
Yes.
see you talking right now.
Okay. All right. All right. Could you see me now?
Yes.
Yep, we can see you.
Okay, so we'll go back to the screens after. So I just want to give again, we're talking obviously to a spinal cord injury group over here. So I'm tailoring this, these pointers for spinal cord injuries. Obviously, in every disability, we can lecture about the way it affects a stroke patient, the way someone who has an amputation. So again, so let's say we have someone who's a paraplegic. He's even a quadriplegic, and he has enough. So we took care of the grip issue because we put his right hand into a tri-pin, so it sort of locks in, and he's able to turn the steering wheel because his hand is locked in. But now we have a different issue. He has the range of motion, but he doesn't have the strength to turn the steering wheel. So he's able to move his hand over his shoulder. What do we do over there? I call the Bussani. I say, hey, Dan, I have an individual. He wants to buy a Toyota Sienna. Could we get that vehicle reduced effort steering? What does that mean? We modify the steering wheel to take the tension down. So there's a certain tension built into a normal steering wheel. So we want to make it just easier to turn. there's zero effort steering. There's a lot of different levels that we could change it to. So we can make that steering wheel looser. And on each individual, we're going to change that based on that person. So some people, it may be just reduced effort. Some people may be zero effort. Some people, we're going to put a counterweight to assist them. So with all the experience that I have doing this for 12 years, I've seen a lot of spinal cord injuries. So whenever I'm with an individual who has a spinal cord injury, I'm going back into my memory of all the different cases that I've worked with, what worked, what didn't work, what ideas do I have. So again, just to summarize, the first thing is we have someone with a spinal cord injury. I need to determine, are they a high-tech client, which means they're going to be with those joystick systems and all the electronic stuff, or they're a low-tech, or I can get them in a vehicle with hand controls and a spinner knob or some sort of setup. Again, then there's little modifications on the side, like a gear shift, selector. We take away the buttons, or there's different things we could do. But we want to figure out what category. If they're high-tech, I'll call up Ranan, who's my coworker, and I'll say, hey, Ranan, we have this and this client who has the high-tech. He doesn't have strength. He doesn't have the range of motion, but he has enough that he could drive a joystick. So we'll refer him to that. If he's low-tech, I'll have the guy come in my cars, and I have another driving instructor who works underneath me who does a lot of the follow-up. But we have the newest equipment, the newest hand controls. We have vehicles with zero effort steering. We have all types of spinner knobs, attachments. We have signal extensions, gear shift extensions, transfer boards. Again, the first thing is evaluation. If it's necessary, if the person only has a learner's permit, we take them to the road test. If they pass the road test, we call up Dan Bussani. We say, hey, Dan, let's get together. Let's build a vehicle. And on a daily basis, we're building these vehicles for a lot of spinal cord injuries. And a lot of them are very successful. It gives them back independence. It lets them, we all know how bad accessoride is. But if someone, if someone has the ability to get a driver's license and be independent, there's nothing like it. So maybe we can go back to the screen share, Avrielle, and we'll just go through some of the slides real quick, and then we'll give it over to Dan Bussani.
Sure. Do you guys, is it still, this is Eli's, can you guys see my screen share?
Well, not
No,
yet,
it's
but
not
we can
sure.
see you. We could just see you right now.
Okay. Hold on. Let me just. Okay. So share screen.
Yeah, just go straight to the pictures and videos, I guess.
Yep,
If
here
there's
I
any-
go again. Yep,
Yep.
and let me just go back to the slideshow.
Yep, there it goes.
There we go.
Okay.
Go back in action, guys.
Yep.
Yep.
All right,
Go
let me
down,
just-
down.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. Go down. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Okay, so that's our program. You can go down. Start with the pictures. I don't have a lot. I don't think I put a lot of them into this one. This is from a previous lecture that we did together.
Yep, this is Tri-Boro Rehab Step 3. Do you want to go through any of these
Yeah,
adaptive devices?
Yeah, we can just go to the pictures.
Yeah, he covered most of that.
Do you want me to show
Yeah.
this?
Yep.
video?
So this is just so you understand before we click this. This is for someone who is who's paralyzed on his right side. This is just a quick look at just a left foot accelerator. So sometimes we have even spinal cord injuries that don't affect the whole body. So this is just a quick video of what it looks like for someone who's paralyzed on his right side.
Hi, my name is Ellie. I'm an evaluator and driver rehab specialist with Tri-Boro Driver Rehab. Today we're going to talk about someone who has weakness from a stroke. So let's say someone has weakness on his right side. He cannot use his right hand or his right foot for driving. So what he would do is we have the spinner knob right here placed on the steering wheel, and he uses his left hand to turn that steering wheel all around. Now what we do is we put a left foot accelerator. This allows us to use his left foot for the gas. The brake stays the same. And let's say someone else, an able-bodied person, wants to drive this car, just puts the hand in the pin and right off. We also have, if you have weakness on the right side, it's very hard to put the seatbelt in. So what we have over here is a seatbelt extension. You grab the seatbelt with your left hand. This takes it right up to the hip, and he's able to do that. Now, let's say someone has weakness on his left side. He cannot turn the steering wheel. He can't grip the steering wheel with two hands. What we do is we grab this spinner knob, we put it right over here on the right side, and now he's able to turn the steering wheel, no problem, only utilizing his right hand. Now over here we have a signal extension. This allows someone to utilize his right hand for the signals without having to use his left hand. Now, this is all for physical disabilities. When it comes to cognitive deficits or visual perception, part of my job is to evaluate, to identify the deficits, and then see what the remedies are, what type of therapies we could use, what type of driver training, and so on. Each person gets evaluated individually, and we draw up a personalized plan for getting them back on the road. Thank you.
I'm not sure if there's any other ones.
That was
Okay,
it.
so I don't think. Okay, yeah. So I don't have a lot of videos in here, but basically, if anybody wants to contact me, feel free to call me, and it's office@tribororehab.com. You can also get it from the moderator. Are you going to be sending out like information for the companies to the participants? So again, anybody who has any questions about if their spinal cord injury, you know, if you're a candidate for driving and you're not a candidate, feel free to call me, and I'm more than happy to have a discussion and go over, you know, the details and what it would look like. And this is what we look forward to getting you guys on the road. Okay, I guess we could take off the screen share and we'll hand it over to Dan Bussani. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent job, guys. As I was being handed the mic here, one of these things just dropped out. So I'm hoping you guys can still hear me.
Yeah, we're good. We can hear you.
Okay, good. So my name's Dan Bussani. I'm one of the co-owners at the Bussani Mobility Team. This company started 50 years ago next year. So 1974, my dad started it. And back in the day, it was a guy that had a really a good vision and pretty talented, but there was nothing on the shelf for guys like my dad to work on. Everything was custom. And while there's been a lot of advancements over the years, the decades, with mobility equipment and cars, I have to tell you, there's still a lot of stuff that's very, very personal, very custom. So just like Eli was talking about, there are a lot of little points of interest where the fittings are really going to make a big difference. So, and we could go through examples for days, just like that video that he took. We could do examples for days about what people, you know, what kind of time we put in to make sure people are safe and comfortable. And we could talk about that. There's a ton to talk about on that, in that side of things. Where people usually get to me well after they've been through either Eli and or Avrielle. Now, often I should tell everybody, you know, the car, I tell this to everybody, the car is the easy part. It kind of sounds funny. You say, well, wait a minute, how can that be? We've been doing this for a long time. And the car is the easy part because there are a few types of vehicles that we can convert. We can do a Chrysler Pacifica, we can do a Honda Odyssey, we can do a Chevy Traverse, and we can do a Toyota Sienna. There's different cars for different people, different sizes, different, when you get behind the wheel, there's differences, there's height differences, a lot of variety that goes into that stuff. But we work together with the driving evaluators to get that information figured out. A lot of times Eli will even come here and do fittings with people just to get an idea of what's going to be the best fit for them. And, you know, if they don't have the specific car that the customer's looking for, they go on their road test, they come here and we do some trial and error. So we all work together is kind of the point of that little, you know, statement. But the van is the easy part. This is important. It's the journey that you take to get there, right? They're expensive. If you are looking to get back to work, I know one of the questions that was kind of preloaded to me was about the pricing. I could give you pricing on cars. You know, a brand new car is going to cost you someplace in the $90,000 range. If you want to stack on driving equipment, you can just start, it starts to multiply from there. It's expensive. This is a very expensive thing to use. There are some ways to get some of this stuff paid for though. There's Access VR. That's a state program that tries to drive people back to get people driving so they can get back to work or to work in some cases. You know, Eli touched on a child getting, needing mobility equipment. They grew into the driving age. Well, those people can qualify too. Anybody that has a disability that is able to work and can be rehabbed, so to speak, to get back to work, that program exists for them. We do most of the time that Eli and I are on the same page is usually because we're dealing with somebody that had. So basically, Eli does this evaluation. He writes up his report, his script, so to speak. If he were the doctor and he fills out a prescription, we would be the pharmacist. Okay, so Eli sends me the script. We obtain all the equipment. We start building the car, and then the client comes in for fittings. Come take 2-3 times to come in for that fitting. Usually the last time they come in and they'll go for a road test with Eli. Sometimes they go with somebody from the state. Something just popped up here. Adaptive driving video. So that journey is the hard part as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to apply for that type of funding, it could take you 6 months to get it. If you're a veteran, there are some programs that assist veterans. Takes a little while. You have to go through the whole evaluation process with the VA. There are some things that I'm actually going to. So Avrielle talked about the ADED, ADED. I'm actually going to be this weekend. We're going to a conference in Kansas City where the mobility equipment dealers like myself and groups of people from the education world are all going to be in the same place. They get to see our mobility equipment. We get to talk to them about training exercises and processes that they use. It is a really good place for us to work together and develop a good synergy for how one can kind of help the other and work together to make sure that the drivers are safe and well equipped. You definitely should check out that website. They have a lot of good stuff on there. ADED is a really, really good place for end users to kind of get some information and some ideas. Avrielle talked about the driver's licenses and how there should be some restrictions, so to speak. We will not modify cars with primary driving equipment. We won't modify them unless there is either an evaluation report, like that prescription, like I was talking about from Eli, or if they at least show up with their New York State driver's license restrictions applied to it. Okay. To back up what Avrielle said, there is a law in the New York State books, DMV books, that indicates if you lose the use of one or both arms or legs or one eye, it's your obligation as a New York State, as a privileged New York State driver's license holder to notify the New York State DMV. If you do not, she hit the nail on the head. You are very much at risk of becoming liable for anything that's gone on. And in this world, very litigious society, I highly recommend that if you protect yourself. We won't even cash your check or build your car without that information being provided to us. It's just that's how important this is. This is not an easy process. To get a vehicle, we make it easy, as easy as we can, but it is a long-term thing. If you were going to pay out of pocket and just do something privately, we are still going to require the prescription. Okay, we don't modify primary driving equipment. We won't put hand controls in a car. We won't modify that steering information like what Eli was talking about, where we reduce the effort required for a steering wheel. We will not make a car drivable for somebody that does not have a driver's license with the applicable restrictions. We won't do it. It's an insurance thing, but it's a safety thing, and on both parts. Okay. And it is important to know that those fittings are pretty critical. I'm choosing not to get too into the weeds with the details, but when Eli sends me a script to have something built for somebody, we're working on a few of them right now, where if somebody comes in and they sit in their wheelchair and they get behind the steering wheel and they are 1/4 of an inch off, or if their hand is too high on the steering wheel or too far away, they can fatigue quickly and that can become an unsafe circumstance. So we literally move wheelchairs, lockdowns and positions and driving positions 1/4 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch. That stuff is not able to be prescribed on a document. That's why it is so important that the three of us are on the same page, because we've gotten scripts from qualified driving instructors all over the area. And once we put the person behind the wheel, there was an interaction there that could not be noted and written down. It had to be done at a physical being once the people were in front of the car. We've had people leave and then have to come back because that adjustment needs to still happen. So it is very true. That whole process, that whole route that you need to take to get driving starts with those guys. Once we've determined what you can use and how it can be done to work for you, that all happens in our shop. And like I said, it takes a while. It takes a while. We try to be patient. We encourage people to be patient because it's not an easy process. Everybody asks me about money. Everybody asks me about financing and leasing and that kind of thing. I can tell you we have financing available. That's pretty favorable. The leasing that is an option to us isn't great. I can tell you right now, it isn't great. There's a lot of money up front. It's a short term, and then the residual isn't great. It's really because these cars are so expensive. There's the whole idea behind a lease is to really put the value on the car.
A little bit. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I got you back now. Leasing has its place for some people, but not everybody. The one thing at my meeting in Kansas City, I'm actually going to be sitting on a panel where we talk about funding. And a lot of times people are encouraged to go do GoFundMe or some sort of a social media. They call it crowdfunding, right? Where people just kind of drop it in $10, $20. Before you know it, there's a fair amount of money in there. Those dollars are taxable. So you got to be real careful about what you're looking out for. There are other agencies. There are some programs out there that offer funding, like we talked about. But there's also some grant money out there that I've just discovered. I don't want to get too far into it right now because it could change, but there are some grant options out there for payment for mobility equipment. There are also rebates on cars if you buy a brand new vehicle. There are most of the major manufacturers of the automobiles offer a rebate towards the purchase of mobility equipment. Honda, for example, is very strict, but they're fair, but they're strict. You have to have a doctor's note, you have to have a paid invoice, and then you have to have a registration card for a vehicle with a VIN number, and you submit it to them. 6 weeks later, you're going to get a check in the mail for about $1,000. Okay, so there is a little bit of they do try to make the effort in trying to make that happen. Chrysler, Toyota, they all have the programs. It all adds up, but you're still talking about a pretty expensive vehicle. So, how long does it take? A lot of time, another common question that I get is, well, do I buy the car and then bring it to you and you guys convert it, or do you guys have the cars? We have new cars available to us. I have some inventory on the grounds in my locations. We have locations spread out, 2 on Long Island, 1 in Westchester County, and I'm proud to say that in next week we're actually opening a facility in Kingston, New York. So we're going to have hopefully some good coverage in New York for everybody to rely on us and not go too far to get to a Bussani location. But the inventory that we have on the ground is the average stuff. I keep a couple of Toyotas. They're a little harder to get these days, but we do have some of those on the ground. Chrysler product is on the ground. Have a couple of Hondas. We do the Traverses, the Chevy Traverses that I spoke about earlier. A little bit more I try to let people purchase those. I have one usually kind of around that people can use, but I don't stock those. They're a little bit more money and they're a little smaller on the inside. The people that own them love them, but it's not necessarily the vast majority of who we serve can fit in them. So those are a little bit more special order. So yeah, I can trying to think of what else. So how long does it take? We have cars on the ground. Sorry about that. We have cars on the ground that we can turn around depending on your needs, your physical, your needs to drive. The cars themselves can be turned around relatively quickly in a couple of weeks. And depending on the conversion. So if we did some of that high-tech modification like Eli was talking about, where we do a joystick steering, you're going to be without the car for 2 months, minimum 2 months after, so the conversion, you could purchase a car. Somebody has purchased a car. They ship the car unconverted to Bussani. I put it on a truck. I ship it out to the conversion factory in Indiana, New York. I use Braunability, the best manufacturer of this equipment by far globally is Braunability. We ship the car out to them. There's an 8-week turnaround time before the car comes back to me with the conversion in it. Ramp system, lowered floor, seat modifications, stop. The car, then I ship the car, or we do it in-house. Sometimes we do these the high-tech installations where it's all electronic driving equipment. That could take us another 6 to 8 weeks to get that installed. So now we're at 4 months. Then it's the series of fittings, which is probably going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks also. So this, like I said, it's not instant. It doesn't happen right away. But
it's worth it. But it's worth it.
In the long run, the reality is I get letters and calls from people, and they're so genuine, and they say, you know what, Dan, you guys changed our lives. And I'm just a kid trying to get up and pay the bills and go to work every day, but to hear that kind of stuff really, really affects me. And it drives my whole company. We're fortunate that my dad had such a good heart, and he worked really hard at trying to get people back on the road, and just for the right reasons. I mean, he could do it, and he fixed it, and he worked, and it just, people drove away, and that's how the business grew. It was like organically, and we're still doing it, and it works. Everybody here knows each other. Everybody comes to work for the right reason. And I can tell you, it really is. It's a cool feeling to watch people drive away, and because without us, life is a different place. We get it, and we really do our best to try to make it as easy as possible. When it's not easy, we try to do our best to make it as easy as possible.
Hey, Dan, we have a few questions for you. So, Mr. Wall would like to ask you a few things.
My son's not going to be driving anytime soon, but he's 6'2".
Okay.
Which is a concern on which vehicle do you pick, which leads into the second question is, what is the limiting factor? Because I just need a wheelchair accessible vehicle.
Sure.
And we live up in Ridgefield, Connecticut. I'm concerned about being able to drive it in the snow. I'm concerned about possibly having all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive.
Okay.
So the size, you mentioned certain cars. I've been in them in the city. They're cabs.
Mm-hmm.
They're all pretty beat up, but my concern is where my son fits in the car and is also comfortable for, let's say, an hour or a 2-hour ride.
Well, 6'2" is the first thing that popped out, right? So he's a pretty tall guy. Do you know how tall he sits? What he'd be able to get in?
We're a little early on that. We don't know what chair he's going to be in.
Okay, no problem. That's going to be something that we take into consideration when the time comes. I do have two off the top of my head are going to be either the Toyota or the Chrysler Pacifica. Both of those have the largest door openings of about 56 inches. Okay. Yeah. And unless he's a big, heavy guy, chances are his width is not going to be an issue getting through the doorway.
Right. He's not
okay. Big. Yeah, and even still, those door openings open to about 31 inches. So it's pretty good size. Once he gets inside, that's really where it's going to determine which one's going to be best for him. The floor cutouts, the floor layouts are different between the two of them. Some offer the Chrysler offers a little bit more space in a different spot than the Toyota, but we can cross that bridge when you get there. The issue you did bring up too was the all-wheel drive. And I can tell you, Bussani does not carry, the only manufacturing company that I carry is Braunability. And I made that conscious decision to do that about 6 years ago, knowing that those guys were that there was going to be another company that does build an all-wheel drive. I would caution you about taking that path. I realize snow is a concern for you and the stability on the road. I understand that. I understand that a lot. My biggest issue is the customer experience when it comes to different products other than the Braunability. And let me explain that. There are serviceability issues that I've heard about with the all-wheel drives. There have been a higher need for you to bring those into the shop is what that means. No matter how good your service department is, and if you're in the Connecticut region, I would say you're welcome to come to us. But we have a close friend that has a place up in Connecticut that I could certainly connect you with. And they carry the BMI product. It's again, to me, we've made the decision not to be there because of that. So
we're basically limited to front wheel vehicles.
I would think that yes, you
Which
are.
are okay in the snow. I'm kind of concerned about, because you do a cutout and then the clearance off above the ground.
Yep.
Becomes an issue with snow. So that's why I was not really, I've been on your website. I've done a bunch of research. It seems that you're always turning back to these models. Is that because the auto industry, those are the only models that are being provided that are convertible?
Yeah, well, they can't, because the floor gets dropped between the two wheels, right? That's where we regain the headroom, is that
Right.
center section. Because that floor gets dropped, there is no space for a drive shaft.
Oh, got it. That makes sense.
Even the Traverse that we sell is the only model we can sell as a front wheel drive. We cannot sell an all wheel drive. And we've, for the last 10 years or so, we've heard people asking about all wheel drive vehicles. And we don't have anything that we can confidently say is the answer to that question.
Well, because they don't make the old style vans anymore. I mean, I did see that some conversions were done with the transit vans and things like that.
Yep.
Want to go to a bigger size. Is that an option?
Yeah. Ford has an all-wheel drive. Mercedes-Benz Sprinter has an all-wheel drive. You can do those, and we can put lips in those. We've been doing those a lot lately, as a matter of fact.
And then
Mr. Wall, just to add on what Daniel's talking about, obviously it sounds like it's early on in your son's process, but things for your son, but also things for everyone are, does he want to return to driving, or are you concerned more of him being a passenger? And if he or anyone on this webinar today wants to get back to driving and they're in a wheelchair, they have to also make a decision that that's something that Eli and Dan can work with you on. Do you want to stay in your wheelchair to drive, or do you want to transfer out of your wheelchair if you have the ability? Because those are two totally different scenarios and things to work out, once you're ready to come out with this process. So just think about it, because I don't know how early on a lot of you guys on this webinar are, but those are things to think about. The modifications can be adjusted based on your transferring ability and or whether you stay safe in your wheelchair, and different locking mechanisms.
Spot on. And I should tell you too, the full-size vehicles, you can't drive from your wheelchair. We can't modify the floors, especially for a guy that's 6'2", with probably an increased tight eye level. We can't modify the floors like we used to in the old Fords. So getting behind the steering wheel in a wheelchair in a full-size van has not been an option for a couple of years now.
And one
Part
other
of what I do is,
what I was going to say also that I'm noticing that because we have a lot of clients that will come to us maybe after the process, or maybe they didn't go to Dan or Eli, and they'll be fitted and they'll come by themselves to our clinic and they're driving, but a big limitation is their ramp and their ability or inability to be able to ascend or descend their ramp. So a lot of times, even though someone is independent with their driving, oftentimes, let's say when they come to our clinic for therapy, we still have to go out and help our clients in and out. So also getting access into and out of your vehicle is really important, as well as how you're going to do it and whether you have a caregiver or not. So those are a lot of things that people don't think about, but are really important to discuss with your driver team.
So as a follow-up to the vehicles that you have, of the vehicles you have on the ground right now, I mean, they're all within distance for me. Are there vehicles that are going to accommodate a taller person that you make that are pre-made?
Yeah. Yes, we do carry used vehicles that are of the same size and trim levels and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's that we have. Just about 50% of the business lately has been used vehicles. So I think that's what you were asking, and
Yes.
yes, absolutely, we can get that. We even have some cars that people call us. I know about. I didn't necessarily bring them into our inventory, but if it's an old full-size Ford or something like that, I occasionally have connections with some of the vehicles that I know are out here, but I don't necessarily own them for sale, but I can connect the dots.
What location do you work out of?
I happen to be sitting in the Bethpage store in Long Island right now, but I occasionally run up to the Mamaroneck place and Smith. I'm all over the place.
My office is in Portchester, so Mamaroneck.
Okay. Yeah, we can stay in touch and I can meet you. That'd be fine. Yep. I should also mention that if just what Avrielle said, if you are looking to get started and get mobile and you're not necessarily ready to drive yet,
Yeah.
well, I do have enough experience to kind of assess somebody's current need and whether or not that car, in other words, if you wanted to buy a vehicle today, I do have enough experience and connection with these two where I can kind of assess this car is or is not something that you can drive further on. Just like what we were talking about. If you said I need four-wheel drive, but he wants to drive, I would say not an option. If you said, listen, I can use a minivan and I can drive up the ramp and I eventually want to get behind the steering wheel in that thing, like I can probably make that assessment and say, yes, this is how this one's going to work. That car can be modified down the road. You'll lose it for 2 months once it's out getting the electronic driving equipment put in. But the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go and talk to my counterparts here and talk to those guys about what you're going to be able to drive.
Sell one and buy another.
Yeah,
If
right.
I can,
That's exactly it.
if I can just
You
add
know,
on,
Go ahead.
if I could just add on, like, part of the assessment that I do is I'm actually looking what could it word over here is that we collaborate. Everybody collaborates together, from the therapists to the mobility guys to us. Before we make any final decisions, we have a phone call, we have a conversation. We'll meet together at one of the Bussani location, and we'll make sure we get it right before we put we say go put the money down. So we always make sure we collaborate. That's the most important thing.
Yep. And if you don't, I don't know if you were done yet, Eli, but the one thing I tell everybody is don't buy anything until we've had a conversation. I will not stop you from buying something someplace else. I promise you, this isn't about that. It's very expensive. These are very expensive, and your mistakes can be extremely costly. Extremely costly. So please don't buy anything unless you've had a conversation with somebody like myself or a mobility dealer that you trust that can assess whether or not the application is right. That's a big deal because we've seen this year alone, we've 3 people came to me with the wrong car. And the amount of money that's lost in time and energy, I mean, it's terrible, but it happens. And please, if there's one thing you can take out of this thing is don't do anything unless you spoke to somebody else about it.
We just recently, we all just worked together on a case where I had a spinal cord injured client who was interested in driving. He would not go. He was very resistant. It took him 2 years to accept that he would need an adaptive vehicle because he just wanted to walk and wanted to walk and wanted to walk. He is walking. He's incomplete, but he's still not at that level, and he wasn't ready to accept that he needed an adaptive vehicle. Long story short, one of my traumatic brain injury long-time clients sadly passed away. And I had Eli come to the clinic. He brought one of his vehicles. We transferred my spinal cord injured client into Eli's vehicle, the one that you just saw, the Lexus in the video, just so he can try the hand controls, because I see someone on the Q&A chat is asking, does the simulator also have hand controls? Right now it doesn't, but I'm meeting with the company tomorrow to see if we can do that. And if not, Eli is very mobile and he usually comes to my clinic and will bring different hand controls for our clients to try out. And a lot of my spinal cord folks, really, I do the clinical assessments more per se for certain reasons, because you folks really just have to get behind the wheel and use those adaptive devices. So I really bring Eli in, but fast forward. So we had a wheelchair accessible vehicle. It was a bronability vehicle that and my old client was not in the, he could not drive. He was a passenger, but our current client wanted to drive. And then we were making decisions. Should you stay in your wheelchair? Should you transfer? All of that. And then even before our client was going to buy the vehicle, they went up to Bussani and Mamaroneck for Bussani to do a full inspection first to make sure that the vehicle was safe, and that also the modifications that Eli and I were recommending to the client were feasible. So that's just a quick example of something that just recently happened. Our client ended up buying the van. It was a lot less expensive than what, you know, Dan is talking about now, because it was certified pre-owned. It was a used vehicle. This is the third owner, but it fit the bill for him. And I know that he was working with the Bussani team to get it up and running. And now he's driving again after 2 years. And that was a quick process. It only took a couple of months for that process, maybe 2 months overall, from him seeing Eli to actually buying the van. So it wasn't a very long process, but that's just one of many examples.
Did he do it? He purchased it privately, right?
He purchased it privately,
Yeah.
but he took it to your center first to get
Totally
the
cool. Yep.
inspection. And then your center did the new modifications for him, but he paid for the vehicle privately through my other client.
That's the fastest way around it. You know, I painted the picture that you're 6 or 8 months away. If you purchase something used and you're not driving, then, you know, that's a pretty quick turnaround time. That's the other side of the process. So that can be done. Somebody actually, I saw one pop up that said, do we do 6-way transfer seats? And the answer is yes. Yeah. Yeah. We do them in both the driver and the passenger position. We can do them in some, depending on what kind of car you have. If you already have an accessible van, we can add it. If you don't already have an accessible van, obviously that can be part of the package.
I have a few questions also.
I don't want to be rude, but I gotta go.
Oh yeah, take care. All right.
Thank you
Hi,
so much.
Mr. Wall.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. If
Um,
you need
the
anything, we're all
information.
here for you.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
You're more than
Yeah.
welcome. So I do have a question. I'm just gonna ask about 3 questions that I have got from the audience previously. What vehicles can be adapted with low tech?
The answer is that almost any car, I could find a way to get hand controls in there, but
Okay.
obviously it's a case by case. There's unique circumstances for every person. If you have someone who's 6'7", I'm not going to put a certain type of hand controls because the way it's mounted. So it really depends on the person driving. But for the most part, when I meet someone, I'm going to look for a path. I'm going to find a way that we can have a hand control, put it into his car, and get him driving.
Awesome.
If you don't
Also,
mind, I just want to point out, to echo his point, we've been doing this for a long time, and there isn't pretty much anything that we can't put a hand control in. I mean, we put them in street sweepers, golf carts, and backhoes.
nice.
You know, I mean, there's almost anything can get a hand control put into it.
Awesome. Someone also asks, when you speak of reaction time, how quickly must someone react?
You have to go 15 times under 9 seconds. So you need to be able to do that, either brake pedal by foot, brake pedal by hand, 15 times under 9 seconds.
Okay. Also, someone asked me, so back to the road test, maybe Eli can help with this one. Do you take the same road test as an able-bodied person?
The answer is that I scheduled a regular road test.
Okay.
When I get to the road test, I do a little show and tell for the inspector, and I say, okay, this individual has a spinal cord injury. They're usually in a power wheelchair. Right now, they're sitting in my car, but these are the hand controls. These are the spinner knobs. This is how he signals. This is how he does this. These are the restrictions to add, an X1, a Z1. I'll go through the whole thing, introduce them. By now, already after 12 years, most inspectors that I see at the road test sites already are familiar with us. But they take a regular road test site. We get them very ready for the road test. So when they go to the road test, they ace it. But they do take a regular road test, but we do help by explaining to the inspector what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Awesome. Somebody, and this would be our last question, because I got to be mindful of everybody's time. But someone just dropped in the chat, I am completely fused from my shoulder to skull and haven't heard of any examples for seeing left, right, mirrors, etc. Can you please point me to some resources to check out options?
I'll address that real quick. Maybe someone else could also address it. So if they're fused, we'll see if there's a way that they could sort of pivot their trunk with the fused neck, from side to side. And there's a lot of different mirrors that we tried to put in, or there's different vehicles have new technology where they have inside the mirrors built in a blind spot detectors. So the answer is that even though they're fused, a lot of times they're able to pivot their body enough to get that peripheral vision going. So again, it's part of my assessment. We're looking at the whole picture of what's going on. So it's all this is built into my assessment to be able to advise someone if they can go back to driving or not.
And just one other thing of what Eli is saying is that, we've had people with, let's say, visual issues or neck issues that they can't turn. And sometimes we'll put them on a supervisory restricted driving, meaning that maybe we'll implement the mirrors, but Eli might write the script saying supervised driving only with another person in the vehicle that can be that second spotter. And we give them a certain amount of time that they can drive. And then based on your family member, caregiver, or friend who's driving with you, they report back to Eli as just an example. In other cases, if we have any safety concerns or they don't have a reliable second person to help be that trainer, if Eli or I can't be there with them, Eli's actually put cameras in people's cars to see their driving ability when they're doing things. So Eli is very creative of figuring out what we can do to help you. So, the Corey who explained your situation, we know that is can be a very challenging situation to deal with, but we will do everything in our power to come up with a solution for you to the best of our ability to make sure that we can get you driving if possible. One other thing, questions about our evaluation is a 2-hour evaluation. The clinical cost is typically $425. Many insurances don't cover that, but Access VR could give you funding for it. There's also another foundation that has given funding to a lot of my neurological clients. It's called Be Perfect Foundation. And if you write your story of what you want or what you need, there's been various amounts of money given to help with that. And just so you're aware that any evaluation you do in our clinic, we use it as a credit towards any therapy program or training service that you might need. Because I know that cost is always a big concern for people. And Eli, if you want to speak to any of your pricing also.
Yeah, so a typical evaluation, again, it depends if you're high tech or low tech. I'll speak about low tech. It's about $495 for the first session. After that, it's about $220 for a driving lesson, which is an hour and a half. When it comes to high tech EMC joystick, usually, in my experience, 99% of those clients have come through a funding source like Access VR. So usually that funding is handled through an agency. Again, because it is costly. So if it does come a situation where someone has to pay out of pocket, we can discuss pricing and so on. But again, for the initial evaluation, it's about $495. There are some discounts available for someone who was referred through a hospital. So perhaps if someone was referred through Mount Sinai or Rehabologym, we can work out a reduced evaluation fee.
And our training fees, if you're coming in specifically for driver training, or we usually do a package together, but your evaluation will apply towards that package. And we typically charge $200 for driver training sessions, which are one-on-one to focus on those skill sets that you need with your OT.
I have a question. So for my spinal cord injury, I'm an incomplete, and I could drive. Currently, I could drive with my left foot, but then there is spasms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also difficult because I have my license before my injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I would need like controls or would I just drive with my left foot?
We can do both. We could definitely trial both with you. We would have you, so you bring up a very good point. What is your name, Mohammed? I heard him say like Mo Money Mohammed before.
Yeah.
Woohoo, Mo Money. So what I would suggest is medication could play a very big role in anything, especially driving. So know your side effects of your medication. Certain medications could either make you slowed or it can have impact on your vision. But a lot of people make sure that if you need a certain medication, the timing when you're going to drive is really important. So if you have a lot of spasticity and you're really concerned about having spasms, make sure that maybe 30 minutes or an hour before you drive, you take that baclofen or you up your pump or something. So if spasticity is going to be an issue where you have spasms that would have a negative impact, that it's a sudden movement or pain that can have an impact on driving, that's something that we would work out with you. We would actually want to trial different times of day with you, whether it's me in the clinic on the simulator or with Eli in different driving conditions, morning, evening, different conditions. Also, when you take your medication and, using the different driving apparatuses, whether you do a left side driving, foot pedal versus a hand control. But I'm sure Eli can tell you, or Daniel can tell you, that you can probably get both hand controls and foot controls. And depending on the fluctuating symptoms you may have day to day, you can probably transition. Just like we've transitioned vehicles when we have a patient who shares a vehicle with a loved one, where you have to pop out the adaptive equipment for for your loved one, but then you need the adaptive equipment. So we can do anything to help you. So if you need anything and you want to come in and we start on the simulator and then we work towards working with Eli in person. Eli comes to our clinic once or twice a week often as a courtesy for our clients. So he can either come to your home or he comes to our clinic in Westchester, and then we work together and we sit down and we try to problem solve everything together. And then if you need any adaptations, that's when we would send you out to Dan and then just work full circle all together as a team. But you're in charge. We'll be your team, but you're always in charge of what your needs will be, and we'll try to, cater to what your goals are.
Got it. Thank you.
I would say also one last thing. If someone has spasticity in his legs, where his legs are spasm out and it interferes with the gas and brake pedal, part of what I do is there's different ways of mitigating that. So if someone drives with hand controls, so usually the spasms are in the legs when they're changing positions. So we have a gas and brake guard we could put in. If they're going to drive with the left foot, there's a way to block the original gas pedal with a little barrier. So part of my evaluation, we're going to look for ways to mitigate the risks of your foot spasming and interfering with the gas and brake pedals.
All right.
All right, everyone. We kind of got to wrap it up now. However, if anybody have questions that they didn't get an opportunity to ask and they have it for maybe a specific panelist, you can always send me the questions and I could forward it over to them. So that way they can provide you with an answer to your specific question. But I would like to thank each of the panelists and everyone who joined today. I think this was very informative and educational. So thank you for attending and agreeing to attend. And we look forward to doing more webinars on this topic in the future. So if anybody has any suggestions, feel free to reach out to me. And we have a poll because we're going to do a adaptive video in the future. So I was inquiring what some of the things that we could hone in on, or, and what format you guys would like. But thank everyone for coming. And yes, I'd like to wish y'all a wonderful rest of y'all day. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you, everybody.
Well,
Thanks for
thank
having
you
us.
Thanks for putting it
Thanks.
together.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Great
Nice
day.
to
Thank
meet
you,
you. Best
guys.
of luck, and we're here for you when you need us.
All right.
Thank you so much. You
Yes.
guys have a good one.
Thank
right,
you.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Garrison.
What's up, bro? I'm still here.
All right. So for the the address and all their the information that they said we had to do for us to go into the clinic and get evaluated and all that.
Yep. Yeah.
Can you send that to either our emails or forward it to our text message?
Yeah, definitely. I could send that information out to y'all so that way you will have access to it.
Yeah, all right, thank you so much, bro.
All right. And good to see you, Mo.
Yeah, of course. You have a good one, man.
All right. What was it?